Hello everybody, my name is Ratnos, and in today's video, coming to you live from the Echo Race to World First venue, I want to talk a little bit about the Race to World First and some of the ways it's going to be potentially different this tier than last tier and then previous tiers. So first of all, the biggest change that is coming, one of the big changes that's coming, is that the tier is 39 item levels higher than last tier. Previously, that number was 26, going back all the way to like BFA or Legion or something when it was 15, or sorry, when it was 30. And now it's going up to 39, which is quite a big jump. And it's going to give this tier a bit more of a first tier of an expansion sort of vibe where we are a lot weaker relative to the content than we were last year. You know, last year we came in and partially because we had pretty good items compared to the tier, and also partially because it was a relatively easy tier on normal and heroic. People were able to stomp through the raids pretty quickly on those difficulties, and in the Race to World First in particular, that meant that they were very easily able to clear heroic. And crucially, they were able to clear heroic with a lot of helpers in the raid. Now, helpers are a thing that have been in Race to World First for the last few tiers. I personally think it's kind of icky that that's such a big part of the Race to World First right now because it makes it so hard for it's not the biggest reasons, but it is one of the legitimate reasons that it's like hard to break into Race to World First if you're not already, you know, big famous guild. But there's a lot of other reasons that, right? The guilds are really, really good. Is always, I think, an underrated thing about it. But the helpers are also a part where just like having more clout, having more access to people watching your streams to then come and trade you gear, or not trade you gear, but be in the raid so more gear drops, right? Is something that matters. Anyways, last year that was really big. This tier, that's going to be a little bit less. So the extra 13 item levels, plus if the tuning is sort of reverts to the mean and heroic ends up being a little bit harder, you know, even at the same given item level, right? Like even at heroic eye level, if the difficulty might go up compared to Aberrus because Aberrus was a historic low for how hard heroic was at any given item level. This tier, I think that might go up, and your 13 item level is lower. So that's going to mean that the amount of helpers that Race to World First guilds can have in their runs, I think is pretty likely to go down. And the Race to World First guilds have been prepping for this as well. If you look at the armory pages or the WoW progress pages of, you know, Liquid Echo, you'll see more characters per player than they did last year, which means they're getting ready to run more splits with just their raiders rather than getting the same effect out of helpers generating the extra loot. So that might mean that we're in splits for an extra day or something this time around. Last year, splits lasted until Friday, I think. This tier, you know, maybe it's a buckle in for longer type situation. The other thing to consider is Mythic Plus early on. Mythic Plus effectively got a 13 eye level bump as well, right? Because if you can get access to that plus 20 gear, yeah, that is 13 item levels more of an upgrade this tier than it was last tier to go and do that. So we may see teams breaking for Mythic Plus much earlier than historically. You'll see like the splits get run, and then they get into the raid, and then if they hit a wall or like during off hours, people will be farming M plus. Whichever person sat for a boss will go and farm their Rage Feather or whatever. That I think this time around it might move the scales more towards we just have the teams blasting some M plus for a few hours a day or something early on in progression. Of course, you know, all these things are nice to do. A lot of us in normal guild, and, you know, I don't want to call any type of guild normal, but like in a non-day raiding guild, you can just have your raiders do M plus outside of raid hours, right? But you can't do that in Race to World First. In Race to World First, every single hour of the day that's not sleeping, right, is like budgeted for something. So if you're doing M plus, you're not doing something else, and that's, I think this tier maybe we'll see the balance shift a little bit more towards M plus again because the eye level is going up by an extra little bit. Now, the other thing you might have seen happening is seed farming, which is there's a few different ways that guilds did it. Some more creative use of game mechanics than others. They all led to the same place in the end, which is that every player in like Liquid Echo method, they have all of their mirror characters, all of their alts have Renown 20 at this point. And the reason for that is actually it's not the augment rune. So at Renown 18, you get an infinite augment rune you can buy for 100,000 gold. That's the main benefit of the Renown track for a lot of players, for a lot of kind of mid-rank players. For a Race World First situation, it's actually the Renown 20 reward, which is an enchanted Worm's Dreaming Crest. Now, this is a type of resource that it's not really worth it to use your Worm's Crest to craft one of these, but if you can get access to one of these for free, it can save you aspect crests that you'd use to make an enchanted aspect crest, right? And basically the way that the math works out is if you have a free Enchanted Worms Dreaming Crest, then you get the option to use that instead of an Enchanted Aspects Dreaming Crest. You lose 10 eye levels on your crafted piece, but you gain 4 extra upgrades of Aspect Crest, which especially in these first few weeks, that's going to be 14 eye levels worth of upgrades on good items. And so these guilds are going to be able to slam that probably on their mains, but definitely on their alts. They're going to be able to just use this Enchanted Worms Dreaming Crest and get much more powerful on their alts by having a, high heroic, right, 476 piece of crafted gear available for them on day one on all those characters. So that's the reason you've seen guilds doing this seed farming of various types. And basically the strategy for this was like you do some cringe stuff of some kind or other, either extremely organized seed farming, you logged in the first day when seeds were better, some kind of, exploity type thing to get a bunch of extra rep. You get somewhere between renown, 15 and 20, and then you farm seeds the rest of the way to get to renown 20. Once you get renown 20, your alts then get the 200% rep increase below renown 10, 100% rep increase until renown 20, and you just use that to basically if you have that increase, then just doing the campaign pretty much gets you all the way to renown 20 on those characters. So that's the mechanism that they did that with. There's also probably going to be an extra Enchanted Worms Dreaming Crest available for the rest of us, just from a quest that says go kill Farok for an Enchanted Worms Dreaming Crest. That'll probably come out either this coming reset on the 14th or 15th, or the one after. That's how it's worked the past couple of tiers. It's been like the first reset of the raid that you can go and get that quest by doing the campaign, and then kill the last boss for an Enchanted Worms Crest. Again, the Race to World First raiders are not interested in doing that because they're not going to want to do that on all their alts, right? Not going to do the campaign. Even on their main, it's not going to be worth it because that's time taken out of the day. But for anybody else that's looking at this and being like, man, I wish I'd done this renown grind, you're not missing out on much. You can earn this that way as well. Okay, other things that are new this tier. It's the first tier we have Augmentation Evoker, which is a big one. Now, this spec's gotten a lot of nerfs over the past several months, both on PTR and on live, but it's still pretty likely that it will be, at least in my opinion, I think it's going to be quite good. I think that with the series of nerfs it's received, though, I don't think it's going to be like meta warping or change like the fundamental structure of how Race to World First looks. So I don't think it's really anything except a probably good, in my opinion, DPS spec that guilds will play probably 2, maximum 4 of. I would have thought 4 was maybe more likely before the most recent nerf, but now I think you'll probably see 2. And any number beyond 2, like the 3rd is a lot worse than the 2nd because the 3rd can't buff the same targets as the first 2. That was one of the nerfs that happened to Augmentation during this long season of them introducing the class and then trying to figure out a way to make it not broken, which we'll see how that's worked out, but that is going to be a feature of this tier, is we'll get to see exactly how well it performs in the Race to World First. My suspicion is that it will do best in Race to World First, and it will start falling off as the content goes down from there, like as you get to lower ranked guilds, but we'll see exactly how that turns out. This tier also had PTR testing. Like every tier, pretty much. We've had all the bosses tested on PTR except for the last one. The only tier where they did less testing than that was Sepulcher, where the last 3 weren't tested. This time around, though, they tested every boss except for Farok. And if I had anything to pull out from testing, it would basically be that most of the bosses were pretty, I feel, comprehensible, and strategies developed pretty quickly that even in my guild, but I get the sense, especially among the Race to World First guilds, it's very likely that they feel confident with their strategies to these bosses. So it's pretty likely that we're going to see them roll up to certain bosses, drop down like 5 world markers already, and then just execute a fully fledged plan that they practiced like during the normal PTR testing, which went over the course of a whole weekend. And so basically, don't be surprised if you see bosses, especially some of the earlier and mid ones, have a full plan pre-developed for them. That's something that, with the way these bosses are designed, I don't see big question marks about how they would function. And there haven't been ones that have undergone huge changes to like the core of how they operate from PTR testing, at least as far as we can tell in the data mining. Of course, it's hugely subject to change based on how the raid actually goes live, but that would be my guess, at least, is that the PTR strategies will work quite well against these bosses, and so it will be a question of tuning and if there's any other wrenches thrown of any kind from Blizzard. And of course, the last boss has not been tested, is a huge question mark. And then finally, let's talk a little bit about how long this tier is going to go, because right now I'm recording this on the 13th. It's about to be the 14th. And the raid comes out on the 14th for America, the 15th for EU. This tier, I was thinking, so historically, Blizzard does this sort of pendulum thing where you do a tier that's too easy. Oops, next tier is probably a little too hard. You do a tier that's too hard. Oops, next tier is probably a little too easy. Aberrus was a pretty short tier. It was pretty quick tier. It was maybe a little bit easy on the Race to World first. A couple bosses just kind of fell over. So historically, if you look at stuff like that, like after Sanctum, there were Kel'Thuzad and Fate Scribe and Guardian all fell over. And next tier, Sepulcher comes out, bang, and just smashes everybody with a 7-year long progression. I don't think they'll go that far in the opposite direction this time, but my guess would have been that it would probably go into like late into the second week, something like the 26th, 27th. Complicating that is the fact that it's American Thanksgiving on the 10th day of this race, which is relevant because the devs that would be working on, watching the race and doing like live hot fixes as needed to fix bugs and manage the race basically probably don't want to work that day. It's an American holiday. So there is some speculation, some tinfoil hat going around that the tier will either be tuned or hot fixed such that it ends before then. I wouldn't put too much stock into that. I think they're probably just willing to work on that day if they need to. Like, I don't think that's I don't think it's as big a deal as like the Razageth Christmas nerfs or whatever that basically killed that boss on Christmas Eve. But I do think that it is something to consider, and it might be a factor this tier. So especially if we start seeing any hotfixes on like the Wednesday or whatever, that could be an explanatory factor. I want to give them a little bit of credit that the race isn't just going to look like that, but it is certainly a possibility, certainly something to think about. Anyways, I think that's all that I have for this video. I guess, we should talk a little bit about where you can go and watch the Race to World first. So, of course, we've got several guilds streaming. We've got Liquid, Echo, and Method, the current 1, 2, and 3, all streaming, and then a bunch of other great guilds. There's this Wowhead post that you can look at and see some of their streams as well. There's also independent coverage coming from places like Raider.io, Warcraft Logs, Dungeon Dojo. There will also be coverage on the GG WoW YouTube channel. Me and Tettles are going to do daily recap Race to World First videos like we have for the past couple of tiers. That's going to be over there. I think they'll probably be coming out sometime in the early morning European time, late afternoon American time, because that's kind of the time that I'll be able to consistently record these things. So, yeah, that's the plan with that. It should be a pretty exciting tier. I'm looking forward to this one. The bosses are cool. I think it's going to be a good tier. Unfortunate it's the last tier of the expansion, but hopefully it's a fitting send off. Anyways, hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.